Welcome to the Intentional Athlete Podcast, where strength is more than a number on the bar. I'm your host, Ross Leppala, powerlifter, coach, and co-creator of the Intentional Athlete Experience. This show is for lifters, movers, and seekers who know that what happens in the gym echoes into your life. We explore how to train with purpose, live with clarity, and channel the pursuit of strength into something deeper, something transformative. Each episode, we'll dive into conversation, tools, and insights that help you align your mindset, body, and spirit. Because real growth doesn't just happen under the barbell. It happens in your mind, in your breath, and in your choices. This is about more than just PRs. This is about presence, power, and progress that lasts. Welcome to the journey, my friend. Welcome to the Intentional Athlete Podcast. Hey, what's up, my friends? Welcome back to the Intentional Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Leppala. Excited and grateful to be here as always. Today, I am joined by special guest, Jared Maynard. Jared has an incredible story. There's some parallels to him and I's stories and journeys in our youth. And Jared had to overcome some significant health challenges a couple years ago that kind of created this burning of the ego, so to speak. And there's just a lot of really amazing lessons and parallels that we can pull from life and lifting and how they interplay with each other. So I'm really excited and grateful to bring this conversation to the podcast. Jared's got a lot of nuggets, a lot of experience, and we can learn a lot from him. So really excited to share that with you all. Without further ado, y'all, Jared, my friend, good morning. How are you doing today?
Doing awesome, Ross. I am surviving the cold and the frozen tundra of Canada as we were bonding over before, and I've been looking forward to
Yeah.
this chat.
Yeah, man, I've definitely been looking forward to it and diving in and learning more about you and your story, because it's definitely one of great triumph. So I'm definitely excited to chat with you and learn from you about your life and your experiences.
Like, yeah, and thanks to Pia Marangoni for connecting us. When I was chatting with her, I think that was shortly after you and she had chatted for your episode with her, and at the end, she was like, "You remind me a lot of Ross." I think it could be just because we're both bald and bearded, but
Right. And we have glasses
and
too.
we've
So like there's, yeah,
basically
a
long
lot of,
lost brothers at this point.
right. Exactly. Yeah. Pia connected us. I appreciate that, Pia. If you're listening, definitely always great to find like-minded people that are, using lifting and pursuit of strength as more than just bigger biceps.
I mean, bigger biceps ain't bad, but I also agree.
Right. Exactly. So why don't we just start out with a little introduction of who Jared is and what do you do, where you're at in the world, and people that might not know who you are, and this is their first time hearing of you.
Yeah, well, besides being a bald, bearded, glasses-wearing Canadian, I am a physical therapist by trade and training. I am a powerlifter and powerlifting coach. I own and operate Unbreakable Strength, which is an online coaching company primarily focused on helping coaches and clinicians uh, offset discovery fatigue, feel strong, have more in their tank so they can change more lives. We can get into how I landed on helping coaches and clinicians because it wasn't a linear path. I started out focusing on powerlifters. In addition to all that, I'm also a speaker. I'm a continuing education uh, educator, especially in the rehab field, associated with organizations like Clinical Athlete. I'm married to an amazing woman, Ashley, who we'll talk about because she's integral to the whole story. I got 3 little girls who are amazing. I'm also a massive Lord of the Rings and Star Wars geek. So if you want to get me going, just say anything about those topics and we'll be here for a good long time.
Well, I've watched a lot of them, but I don't get into them so much that I could hold a conversation about them. So
That's
I
okay.
think we'll stick to the lifting.
It's fair enough by me.
Yeah. When did, how old are you?
35, 30,
30,
turning
35.
36 this year. Yeah.
Gotcha. So when did you first find the barbell?
So I first found the barbell, excuse me, when I was about 16. And that was because between my second and third season playing football in high school, it was between my junior and senior year, the coaches took us out at the end of the school year and did some fitness testing. Their only rule when we came back for summer camp before our senior season was if you were better than you were when we did the end of the year fitness testing. You got to play. And that was it. They wanted to
Okay.
see that we cared enough about the team and how we did to be training on our own.
Yeah.
So we didn't have an S&C program. They didn't give it to us. Wasn't
Right.
within their purview. So that was the first time that I touched the bar, or more specifically dumbbells and the machines that my parents had in their basement, uh, which was pretty addictive, especially knowing that for me, I started out growing up as a fat kid where, I distinctly remember being in second and third grade and being made fun of pretty consistently by the other kids, or some of the other kids, for being different, for being fat. They made fun of my lunches. When it came to sports at recess and in gym class, the question in my mind was, am I going to be picked last or second last? You know, do they do they like me slightly more than the other kid that I know they don't like?
Yeah.
And I didn't have the words for it at the time because second or third grade. But looking back on it, I was definitely operating with this understanding of, if I was going to be rejected by the other kids, then one, I was accepting their assessment of me and my role within the world as far as it went at school. And it followed me even after the school year finished. Because in the summer, when all the other kids were outside on beautiful days playing, street hockey and whatever, I didn't want to keep being rejected. And the thought process really was, if I'm going to be rejected with the other kids, I'm just not going to be around the other kids, which led me to spending those beautiful days downstairs in my parents' basement watching TV, because the TV couldn't reject me or make fun of me.
Yeah. Right.
Um, Now it leads into the barbell, because with an interlude in between, because my parents saw that, and God bless them, they wanted to try to intervene. They tried to get me set up with other sports, and we tried a bunch of them, and nothing really stuck until we tried martial arts. And maybe it's because I grew up obsessively watching the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and wanted to be the Red Ranger.
Right.
I actually got mad at my parents for not naming me Jason. It's a true story.
Yeah.
Um,
That's funny.
or it was, maybe because I got to hit people and, wasn't getting in trouble for it.
Oh
But
yeah.
but it was the first community that took me in and didn't judge me, didn't reject me because I was different or because I wasn't good at this physical endeavor. And even more than that, it was the first taste of confidence that I got, especially being given the tools to like take care of myself, um, which that was addicting. And that's what I found in a different form in the barbell when I stumbled into it, for the pragmatic purpose of getting better for football.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely very relatable on the social front at school, and having been made fun of a lot in my life for other different various reasons. The isolation is real and the rejection is real, and it stings. And there's oftentimes not a way to articulate what you're really experiencing and feeling at that age. And, very similar, like finding the barbell was one of those things that really started to shift and change and help me be more accepting and confident of myself. And the the hitting of other people and not getting in trouble for it, that was the appeal for football for me. Like, wow, you mean I get to hit this person and I don't get in trouble for it? Man, I've been wanting to hit that motherfucker for weeks now. Now, yes,
So
let's go.
cathartic, right?
Yep.
Do you remember that scene
There's always,
from Remember the Titans where Louis Lastic, he turns up at whatever just after his family moved in. He's like, I get to hit people while I'm at it. Like that
yeah.
resonated. I felt very seen with that.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I know there was always a sad part of me when somebody that I wanted to hit would quit playing football. I'm like, oh man, you were my favorite. Come back.
Please, I need you here.
Yep, absolutely. So you found the barbell as something to help you make that change of improvement in football to see playing time. but I would imagine that there's lots of other things that were being cultivated and developed in the background.
There were. Um, Starting with that catalyst of martial arts again, there was the immediate appeal of I'm not being rejected and I'm being taught how to hold my own. Physical safety, especially after anyone goes through an experience of not feeling safe and being ostracized and being an outsider, a complete paradigm shift. And then what came along with that sort of on the back end that I didn't know I needed and I wasn't looking for initially, but was very grateful to find anyway, was the sense of community, of people from all walks of life. I remember the other kids in the classes I was in, different races, different ages, different religions, different skill levels, and we were all really cool with each other. Uh, People would help each other out. Obviously, you have to if you're going to be paired up for drills and sparring and all that stuff. But we would also hang out between classes, especially for those of us who were part of more than a few. And that was another piece for me. This was the first experience that I had of being not only accepted and part of the community as a whole, but also invited up to something special because my dedication, my work ethic, potential, they were being seen by the instructors. So I had my regular classes that I attended 2 or 3 times a week. And then they had something called the Black Sash Club. Sashes are belts for in Kung Fu, if anybody's not familiar. Um, and you didn't have to be a black sash to be in it, but it's for the people who like you worked hard. They saw that you were in it, and they just invited you. Hey, do you want to step up? We'll learn advanced forms. You get to learn weapons, and you just get to be part of your initiative, and your work is seen and rewarded.
Yeah.
That was the first taste of any of that I ever got. So not only is it a paradigm shift from being rejected and an outsider, but now I'm being, in some very real senses, shown as an example of what the community as a whole wants to exemplify. And I was also part of the demonstration team. We went to competitions. I went to at least one. We also went out in our community to like malls and put on exhibitions in our full uniforms, using weapons, basically being as cool as we possibly could. So other people wanted to come and join us. And that definitely, if nothing else, told me that I didn't have to accept the story that I'd been told so far in my life, that I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy, couldn't be included, and that I was relegated to just down here.
Yeah.
It sort of busted that door wide open and said, "No, you could do what you want if you want to," you know,
Yeah.
um, which then paved the way to me having the courage to want to go out for football. Because I mentioned Remember the Titans, literally watching that movie for a family movie night, which was part of our tradition. My dad was the only one who played football and understood the rules of the game. So about every 20, 30 seconds during the game sequences, we were pausing. Wait, Dad, what happened? Are we excited about that or are we sad about that? And
Yeah.
I loved it. I'm like, I need to go do that. So that was the start of like just exploring what was on the other side of that door that just got busted open.
Yeah. I definitely like the way that you phrase that too, of how it was like the catalyst to you realizing that you didn't have to live life by that narrative that's projected onto you by other people.
Yeah.
And like, I think there's a lot of well-meaning phrases that we hear as kids, like, oh, you can be anything you want to when you grow up. But like, I think what happens a lot of times in our brains is we go so fucking far with that in our imagination that it seems unrealistic, especially for people in situations where they've been bullied to a significant degree. And it's like, oh, I could never be an astronaut. Like that's ridiculous. I'm told I'm a loser and all these things. And like, but the second you start to see that, the second you start to see that It's not necessarily about being anything you want to be and picking some random ass thing that makes it so far out there. I think it's far more important to say that like you can be anything you want to be when you grow older. It's and it's more a matter of like what excites you? What brings that inner you to life?
Yeah.
Cool. Now go pursue that and don't let other people tell you that you can't
Yes.
because they don't know you. When they say you can't do that, that's them projecting their limitation onto you. And like I can't help but think just a couple of those extra sentences for those little minds would reshape how that's perceived all over the place.
I couldn't agree more. And uh, speaking of little minds, it's, I mean, everything shifts when you become a parent or if you become a parent. And I mentioned I've got three little girls at home. My twins are 8, and my youngest is 5, going on 15. Um, and we're starting to have these moments and these conversations where I'm recognizing both a desire and a need for myself and for my wife to reinforce what you just said, and to almost future cast for my daughters. Uh, hey, look, you're probably going to run into these situations, and kids, whether at school, they were in Catholic school before, we're homeschooling them now, but these other kids that you interact with, some of them are going to say this, and they may not like you, and that's okay because it means nothing. And starting to reinforce, I think you're right. I think it comes down to probably a couple of sentences, which maybe are the seeds that we plant. Um, I know, I know for me that would have made a big difference. And I mean, we may talk more about it. Um, I've been doing a lot of a lot of soul searching over the last several years, catalyzed by some large events,
Yeah.
and that continues now. I'm very clear on part of part of my mission now is to be the person, be the kind of man that little Jared needed in his life.
Mhm.
I am eternally grateful to my parents who did an amazing job, and I'm recognizing just as I look back at these different stages or eras of my journey so far, like, oh, I, being who I am, really would have done well if someone would have told me this one thing,
Yeah.
or would have held this space at this point in time when I was going through that stuff. So, you know, if anybody's done anything, anything in the realm of therapy or like parts work or internal family systems, I've started that part of the journey recently. So talking to the inner child can sound kind of funky and out there if you're not familiar with it or you haven't tried it, and that's fair. Uh, I can just tell you my experience so far has been really helpful and healing to an extent of being able to tell that little kid, hey man, we're gonna be okay.
Huge. It's so huge. There like I could go on and we could never go anywhere else, but I could talk about that for days because I also have done a lot of that inner child work and it's super beneficial and super helpful. When I think about stuff like that too, I often can't help but find myself thinking back to the phrase sticks and stones may break your bones, but words may never hurt you. Because that was one that I heard a lot. Being picked on and called names, like that came out a lot. And it's well meaning,
Mm.
but it's the most horribly crappy, nonsensical, non helpful phrase on the planet for anybody that's being called names.
Yeah.
Have you been on the receiving end of that phrase and anything like that?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's bullshit. Words
Yeah.
cut deep, man. Uh, and not always. I'll say this. Yes, I've been on the receiving end of being called names. Um, I've also had experiences where the person who's close to me didn't outright call me, "Oh, you're a fucking loser," or something like that, a direct assault. but what the person did say or how they did it still cut deep in some cases deeper. So yes, have plenty of experience with that, and I agree that the saying is well-meaning. I think it's meant to be empowering. I think in practice it doesn't help, and it probably minimizes and dismisses the real pain and grief and identity wounds that can come from words and experiences that may not even come with like the distinct word or label, but still have the same effect.
Yeah, 100%. And like fundamentally, the one of the biggest reasons why all that stuff is real and important is like the way I talk about like brain science and who we are and how we operate is you're a blank slate. You are, when you come out of the womb and you are born, your brain is nothing. And so every thought that you think about yourself is something that's been created. And when you are young, that creation is what is projected onto you and what you're told. So if you're told you're a piece of shit at some point, and if that's reinforced enough times, you're going to believe that you're a piece of shit. You're going to believe that you're stupid. You're going to believe what that projection from the outside is. So this idea that words may never hurt you is like, it's so far from the truth, it's unreal because words shape you. And doing that inner child work is the idea I like to think about as going back and having this like, I'll meditate on it and I'll visualize me, adult Ross, going back to those moments in time to child, little boy Ross, and undoing those words and redoing them in a way that I believe supports me now, from a state of athletics and my pursuit of powerlifting, from a state of how I show up as a partner to Vanessa, as a state of how I show up to Rosalie as a father and friends and all that stuff. And I think it's important because if we don't do that, the programming that was projected onto us is going to come out and play. And that's one of the most powerful parts about being a parent is you start to catch yourself, the words that come out of your mouth, like, whoa, that wasn't me. That just happened.
Yeah.
And that was something like, oh man, I remember that hurting when my dad said that to me. And now that just came out of my mouth.
Yeah. I keep having those experiences. I say keep. It sounds like we're probably similar in this because you're clearly thinking about it, as am I. You don't register that, whoa, that wasn't me if you're not, if your radar's not on and you're looking for those to some extent. Excuse me. And oh, uh, seeing what triggers me from my kids has been a trip, particularly one of my twins who is the most like me. Funny enough, she looks the most like me. She also has my personality traits, or the most of them. She feels things very intensely. I would call myself an outgoing introvert. If anybody's familiar with Myers-Briggs, I'm an INFJ. Or if you're an Enneagram kind of person, I'm a type 3. So like deep thinker, feel things very deeply, which can be great, and it can also cut the other way. Um, and my daughter, she is extremely nurturing. She feels those same things. She holds on to the same things that I tend to hold on to, which is a real challenge. And I consistently find myself often unconsciously getting worked up or holding tension or getting triggered by how she's acting. And I have
Yeah.
to realize that's not a her thing, that's a me thing. And this is not easy. And this is an opportunity for me to show up for her the way that I wished someone would show up for me, and do the best that I can, imperfect as it is. Um, and I don't know. We could talk about generational differences, and even beyond generations. I think every individual's upbringing is going to obviously vary. I've just had more and more conversations with, you know, people in our general age range, millennials, and I've been encouraged by the fact that I think a lot of us are doing this sort of inner work, or at least thinking about this stuff and recognizing stuff that worked and stuff that didn't work of our own upbringing and trying to at least do better. It's not perfect, but
Yeah.
trying.
Right. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Trying, it's not necessarily perfect. It won't ever be, but at least it's, a intentional step towards progress. And like, I think I often like to make sure to say that it's important to think that none of this stuff is to like undermine love between my parents. Like,
Mm-mm.
I don't think back and be like, oh, you know, my parents are bad because of ABC. No, it's more a matter of like, hey, I see how this pattern was learned from my parents, and this isn't how I want to do things. I want to do them differently. Whereas there's also things that, yes, this is what I want to be doing. I want to instill the importance of being aware of the food we're consuming and wasting. I don't want to waste food, while at the same time, we are financially well enough off that we don't have to be fearful about food in that sense. We don't have to finish the food from our plate and clean our plate and lick it clean. Like, we're not poor and we're not going to be wasteful at the same time, and finding the balance between those things.
I agree.
I'm curious to also think about this from like lifting. How do you feel like lifting and the pursuit of strength has helped you be aware of these generational patterns and inner child work that needs to be, or that you'll benefit from caring for?
Yeah. I think it starts for me in seeing the through line of how I grew up. I'm the oldest of five kids. I was always the type A overachiever for various reasons. So after starting to lift weights for football, football finished in my senior year. I kept lifting because I needed something to do since I wasn't at practice 2 hours a day, 5 days a week. And then that continued through my undergrad, takes us to 2012, 2015, excuse me, 2012 to 2013 at the end of my undergrad before PT school. This is the time where natural bodybuilding was at having a renaissance. So I was watching all the YouTube stuff from Omar Issa, from Team 3DMJ, Chris Jones, like that whole, you know, group
Yeah.
of creators. And I wanted to do that. So that's what I trained for. I did that for a few years, never competed, intended to. But what stopped me was really kind of crashing into the wall head first of, yeah, the convalescence of one, PT school and it being stressful. Two, uh, not coping with anxiety, was never diagnosed, but it was very prevalent. And my perfectionistic tendencies, because again, I wasn't thinking in these terms, but looking back, I can clearly see that my uh, my perfectionism manifested in me deriving my worth by how lean I was or wasn't, or how perfectly I hit my macros or didn't, or
Yeah.
how well I stuck to my program, you know? Um,
Yes.
so
There's
go ahead.
Sorry, you go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you, but there's definitely something to pluck at there that I think is really huge.
Yeah, let's see if I hit it. If not, come back because I wanna hit it.
Yeah.
Um, so I distinctly remember having like um, anxiety or panic attacks at least once, maybe twice in the first year of PT school, and then heading to the second. Uh, I had I was engaging in disordered eating. I was binging. Again, never diagnosed, but that was the pattern because I drive so hard and shoot for this unsustainable perfectionistic standard that the wheels were always going to fall off. And every 4, 5, 6 weeks, I'd have another cycle. Fuel was put on the fire because of the coach I was working with at the time, who, if you want to talk about words and cutting deep, oh, he's a fucking great example of it. I've shared about that publicly before for the purpose of making sure people know like that's not okay. That shouldn't exist in our space. It does,
Right.
but it shouldn't. So it brought me to the point where I just like I couldn't keep going with the focus on bodybuilding. I still have so much love for physique sports. I don't think it'll ever be for me. And that's really where powerlifting became like my rebound girlfriend, where I'd known about it, but then I was looking at it more intently, like, you mean I can, not these words, or I didn't use these words, but this is what I felt. You mean I can channel my perfectionistic tendencies instead of my macros? I can just focus on whether my lifts are going up and whether my technique is perfect? Sign me up, you know?
Yep.
So, um, as far as, and we'll come back to it because I want to know what pinged for you a second ago. Uh, but as far as how this, you know, the inner child work and what my journey has looked like and how it relates to powerlifting, this was the on ramp. And the more that I've shared this, the more that I find that other people have a very similar on ramp, especially with perfectionism, which still shows up because old patterns really do die hard.
Yeah. So the things that were striking for me there around anxiety, I truly believe in my core of my being that we as a society need to shift the way we view and think of anxiety. And it's not something you have. It's not something that is diagnosed and treated with medicine. It is an experience in your body that is screaming at you. It is trying to tell you something so desperate that you need to pay the fuck attention to your soul. And what's happening in that moment of anxiety, and it can be for not just this one singular reason, but we're going to narrow it down to this one for this particular conversation and example because it's a through thread that I think we can relate to, is the derivation of self-worth based on outcome. And your perfectionist tendencies were like the anxiety was the response to, if I don't get this perfect and I don't get this perfectly right, people will call me fat again. People will not like me again.
Correct.
And the anxiety is like you really like doing everything that you can to hold on to that thing and not lose it.
Yeah. That's
And
exactly what
the
it was.
inner child work is the healing of letting go that derivation of self-worth to outcome. And you're only ever, your freedom in life can only exist if you do not derive your outcome or if you do not derive your self-worth from outcome. Otherwise, you will be a slave to outcome and it will fuck with you so bad in every single way. It doesn't matter if you're pursuing powerlifting, bodybuilding, physical therapy, race car driving, whatever it is. And man, as somebody who's been there and lived that and was on anxiety medication at one point, and that's why I believe this is because I've been through that gauntlet and have been on the prescription medication for it and realized that one beautiful day I looked at that bottle. I'm like, I don't need this. I just need to listen to my soul. Like,
Amazing.
done. Threw that shit in the garbage. Haven't touched it in almost 20 years now since.
Incredible. Incredible. Um, like, I fully agree, particularly around the derivation of self-worth from outcomes, which I'd imagine that for those who are listening to us talk right now, for whom this is maybe resonating the most, are probably also lifelong high achievers or overachievers, people who are used to existing and performing at a high level in powerlifting, in your career, in whatever school, whatever the fields are. That certainly was my experience.
Yeah.
And we want to go back to, those little sentences which probably create massive ripples when present in someone's upbringing. If I don't know for sure, but I'm very confident that if there was a conversation had, and again, no fault, no ill will, resentment held towards my parents, they did an amazing job objectively. If there was a conversation along the way about, hey man, you're a high achiever, you clearly value it, you do it like repeatably, reliably, you got to know that's not where your worth comes from though.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would have agreed or like if I would have been ready to really let that come to full fruition. But that's a lesson that, I mean, I needed then, I still need now, and I've learned it, and now the work for me is in implementation and reminding myself, because inner child still, perks up,
Still there.
still there. He's still scared of threats. The other parts, the
Yeah.
protector, the manager, they are trying to protect that kid. So when
Yeah.
something's below standard, there's the fear of like, oh shit, everything's fucking coming down. We're in danger. Um, and even for this part of my journey, the parts work being relatively recent, just in the last like month or two, um,
Mhm.
being aware and being able to clock when it does come up. If I'm in the gym and you know I'm hitting a number that's 5-10 pounds under where I was last week, the perfectionistic part of me is like, man, we're not there yet. And even starting to recognize, okay, I see that pattern, and trying to hold that space without judgment because I understand where it's coming from, and then trying to bring it back to what really matters. I'm
Yep.
here. We're okay. We're doing what we can. This is enough.
Yeah.
Um, it's a work in progress.
For sure. For sure. And like there's still days that I have to actively manage that as well. Like we're not linear beings, we're not static beings. So there are definitely going to be times when we have a memory from 3, 5, 10, 20 years ago that will be a catalyst to certain emotions and feelings that we have to be aware of and manage. But one of the things I wanted to add to that too, and like what, at least from my perspective, I think one of your shifts and a natural shift for somebody in that anxious moment pursuing bodybuilding, the appeal to powerlifting is moving from a subjective sport to an objective sport.
Oh, yeah.
It removes that uncertainty. It removes that like judgment from peers. There's not as much of the weight of judgment in the sport of powerlifting because you either
Mhm.
you either lift it or you don't. So like that becomes a lot more clear and removes a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty that are often like contributors to heightening that experience of anxiety. I also like to encourage people in that moment too, like in this perfectionist conversation, is one of the views that I hold as I've, pursued powerlifting and strength for multiple decades now is like my job isn't necessarily to perfectly put more weight on the bar every single time. My job as an athlete is to make choices that align with where I'm at in that particular moment. And what that is and what that looks like will result in a different outcome each time. But my application is the thing that I strive to be consistent with, is the thing that I strive to be perfect with and skillful at the application of it rather than the hyper concern about outcome.
Yeah. On that, it's related. Do you do you read much in terms of like leisure reading, particularly sci-fi, or is that not so much your jam?
No, honestly, like one of the biggest changes, one of the most positive changes I ever made in my life was when I shut cable TV off
Mm.
and started picking up books. I realized that I needed to start consuming things that elevated me, not distracted me from life. And I definitely consume a lot of different various personal development books and ideas and spirituality. And when I feel like I need a break from something that's showing me to change or be different, because I definitely think sometimes we can get stuck in that like, oh, I need to be better, I need to be better, I need to be better,
Yes.
and that can be daunting.
Yes.
Like why am I not done? Why am I not just good enough?
It's the same. It could be a manifestation of the same patterns we're talking about.
Right, exactly. So like learning that and being aware of that, like, and when I need a break for that, I reach for some Chuck Palahniuk.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I have two recommendations. The one is related. The other is just something I'm a fanboy of. The
Yeah.
latter is, if you've ever gotten or will ever get into Brandon Sanderson's work, I'm a big fan, especially if you like
Okay.
fantasy or could, step into that world. But what came to mind was the saga called Red Rising by Pierce Brown.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite series of all time. And without any spoilers, the most recent book that's been released, one of the main characters, his whole life he's been able to brute force his way through. And it served him quite well on like some pretty large scale conflicts and some pretty dire circumstances. And it served him until it didn't. So
Mm-hmm.
this last book follows him as he's having to relearn who he is because he's broken. His identity is no longer intact. So now he's wrestling with who is he? There's still people who need him. And he's given this book called The Path to the Veil, which is very Buddhist and Taoist in its feel. And I bring it up because I re-listened to this in audiobook format earlier this year, and I didn't know that I needed to listen to it, particularly for like the spiritual lesson here, even though I'd listened to it once before and loved it. He has to go up against the most difficult enemy that he's ever fought, and he's in a losing position. In the fight, he wants to go and do what he's always done and push his advantage and try to create openings, but he can't do that because if he does, he will die because the enemy is just bigger, stronger, all the things. And over the course of the book, as he listens to The Path to the Veil, which is all about you're on the path and the path is upon you. All you need to do is walk. And these other paradoxical sayings of the path. And it's not the outcome or the destination, although a path you would think leads to a destination, but shifting the character's focus from getting there and being there and having it be done to being aware of and content with and submissive, maybe that's a word that fits, to the process. And it manifests by him just going where the openings are. He wants that opening over there, but it's not open yet. This one over here is, though.
Yeah.
So he starts to flow. And again, without spoilers, it makes all the difference. And it felt like that was a lesson and an answer to prayer that I needed to have
Yeah.
reinforced, especially for the season of life that I'm in.
Definitely. I mean, it resonates for sure. For sure. There's stress is created by the resistance of your inability to follow that flow. So, and yeah, I mean that's definitely, I think that's a really good segue to one of the big things that one of the big aspects in your life, and one of the things that you talked with Pia about, and one of the things that brought us together was, life threw you a big shit sandwich.
Big old
And
shit sandwich.
yeah, and you had to eat it.
Good.
What happened?
So we'd have to go back to the day after New Year's in 2023. I'd been to see my family, great visit, came back and started to feel sick. I didn't think too much of it. It's peak cold and flu season. My wife and daughters were sick too. What started to tip me off to this being different is that a week later, they were all better, but I was getting worse. Over the next 3 weeks, it's this escalation from I'm not shaking this flu. Let me go see, and starting to have some really intense sinus pressure and symptoms, having insomnia start for the first time in my life. So something's wrong. I got to go see my doctor. See my doctor. Actually, it was the nurse practitioner. We think it's a sinus infection. Get antibiotics. Go home. It's not touching any of the symptoms. The insomnia is getting worse. My lymph nodes start to swell. And the best description I can give is those topographical maps where you run your fingers along mountain ranges. That's what my neck and shoulders felt like with my lymph nodes being that swollen. So we're not talking about, you get a little lump when you're sick. We're talking about something is significantly wrong.
Yeah.
We go to a smaller hospital closer to where we live. Doctor diagnoses me as having mononucleosis. I got made fun of in high school for having mono. I never had it. My friends were just assholes. I love them to death. Um, and I'd never had it. My wife never had it. No idea how I got mono, but apparently I did. And we found out later, that was the source of the insomnia, among other things. I'll go home with some sleeping medications to help counteract that. It was 3 days later, about 5 in the morning, another sleepless night, and I am miserable. I feel awful. My wife is at the kitchen table and she looks over at me and says, "You're yellow." And we both go, "Oh shit." Because we know something's going on. And while PT school doesn't focus on this, I know enough to recognize jaundice when I hear about it. So get my parents to come watch my daughters. Ashley, my wife, takes me to the hospital, a larger hospital further away, because we know we need more resources. And like we talked about, at this point I was 32. So most of my life had been spent after finding kung fu and then doing football and then lifting weights for aesthetics, then bodybuilding, then powerlifting. Most of my life had been spent with me being able to trust that my body would serve me well, could do really cool shit. Um, After my wife parked the van, the doors to the ER were like 20 or 30 feet away. And halfway through, I really didn't know if I was going to make it or if I needed her to get me a wheelchair. Get in the doors, nurse takes blood pressure and heart rate. Heart rate's clocking around 200 just from getting up out of the van and walking. Blood pressure spiked. Get registered, and I tell the nurse behind the glass, "Hey, look, I think I'm going to pass out." And I very nearly do. Then the 6 days from hell began as I was admitted, and the race was off to figure out what in the actual fuck was going on. Um, this is where my memory gets patchy because I had delirium setting in, which was a byproduct of the mononucleosis. Um, but over these 6 days, it was, as far as I can recall, and from hearing from my wife and my parents, who dropped everything, came running, and they started trading off shifts to be with me. Um, it 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 was this stream of specialists, doctors, nurses, people coming in to try to give me supplemental oxygen, monitor my vitals, try to figure out what's going on from a kidney perspective and visual function. I have another rare disease that is blinding. It's more progressed now than it was then. But at the time, it felt like if life itself had a dimmer switch and someone turned the brightness down 50% and made it blurry, that was going on, along with my liver failing. They didn't know why. My kidneys were failing. Didn't know why. Even on supplemental oxygen, my sats were going down. 6 days later was when they first put me on life support, and with the diagnosis of HLH, which stands for hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis. It's a hyperinflammatory syndrome. It was described to me as an autoimmune disease. It's not a true autoimmune disease, but it can be caused by genetics in some cases, not mine, or another autoimmune disease, a cancer, or a viral infection. And I was lucky door number 3. Secondary HLH, like I had, has a mortality rate of between 50 to 75%. Best case scenario, I had a coin flip chance of getting out of that hospital. And it wasn't looking good. I was on life support for 5 weeks in total, um, on a ventilator, first down my throat, and then at a certain point, they had to do it, give me a trach. I was on dialysis because my kidneys had shut down, my liver had failed. HLH has the immune system just ramp way the hell up, and it attacks healthy cells, in particular red blood cells, and it leads to multi-system failure. Um, there is a treatment protocol which is brutal, as is any protocol that involves chemotherapy and other drugs. And it was a battle, man. Um, my team, especially my hematologist, had to make the decision day by day and sometimes hour by hour with my pharmacist based on my labs and my vitals to see how much of the chemo that I needed to potentially live that my body could handle because it was already so frail. And we went through this for weeks. Again, with my wife becoming a single mom overnight. It was the day before my twins' 5th birthday that I went into the hospital. So she doesn't know if her husband's coming back. She doesn't know how she's going to tell these little girls why daddy's not here and if he's coming back. My parents, they came again, and between them and my wife, somebody was on shift basically with me at all times. They didn't know if they were going to have to bury their son, and it looked like they were going to, because the last treatment that they could try, they gave. All of the tests and vitals continued to nosedive. So my hematologist told my parents, we're going to start talking about palliative options, and you should start getting ready to say goodbye this week. Like, we had it down to the week where if nothing changed, we wouldn't be having this conversation now. And I can't tell you why I came out of the nosedive beyond saying that there was a lot of prayer being offered by a lot of people that I'll never meet. Um, and again, it was a situation where the treatments were being given, I was being monitored constantly, and we weren't seeing the turnaround that should have happened. And it led to end of life conversations being started. Quite miraculously, I pulled out of that nosedive. And the doctors and nurses who were with me all the way through that tailspin and then saw the pull up, they were the ones who gave me the nickname Miracle Man later. And to be clear, it's not like I pulled up and then I deadlifted 507. I was horribly, horribly sick and frail and dependent. Um, but I wasn't dead. And that's when the slow, painful journey back really began. Um,
Were you aware of like where you were at that time? Like, or were you kind of like unconscious?
I have patchy memories. Actually, I was talking with my wife about this the other day. So my firsthand memories, they go all the way up to getting into the hospital, and then they start getting patchy for those 6 days before life support. I do have both firsthand memories of when they lessened my sedation, because they had me heavily sedated for most of those 5 weeks. But at one point, at least, they lessened the sedation to see how I was doing. So I remember that. I also have these memories of weird, almost psychedelic feeling kind of dreams where I dreamt that I was being kidnapped and taken away to the circus. I dreamt that I was in a family of whales and I was a whale myself. And as I was filled in on what was happening during those 5 weeks, which was a black hole for me, memory-wise, firsthand. But as my family started filling me in, it started to make sense. And this was my brain making as much sense as it could of the sounds that it was taking in and how the drugs themselves were affecting me.
Yeah.
So I have some, but a lot of them had to be backfilled in to connect to the dots.
Right. But what's, I guess, interesting, for lack of a better word, there is it's almost as though, like, the way that I'm conceptualizing it is, you're sedated, you're on the hospital bed, you have visitors, they're talking to you,
Mm.
and your brain is creating this experience of going off to clown college or going to be a whale. And so
Yep.
like, I mean, I think one of the things I want to highlight from that again is like it's created.
Yeah.
Like our brains are super fucking powerful, and if we're not intentional with it, they're going to be super powerful and probably not a productive way.
Mm. I would agree. And that showed up for the next phase in the sense that once I came out of the nosedive and started to stabilize, and they could start to lessen the sedation and take me off and start to take me off of life support, no longer needed the dialysis, and started to wean me off of the ventilator. I started to regain consciousness, and I don't have a moment where it suddenly kicks back in. All right, I'm back online. But I do have memories of starting to come to in the ICU. I always knew I was in the hospital and gaining my bearings. And it was truly like waking up in a different body. I had walked in standing about 6 feet, 194 pounds, and I woke up same height, uh, but about 150 pounds because even though they tried to give me nutrition through my NG tube from my nose down to my stomach, um, with the HLH, the inflammation was so rampant that I couldn't absorb that nutrition. So my body subsisted off of much of that muscle, about 40 pounds of largely muscle that
That muscle mass saved your life.
it bought me that time. And it played a huge role in in the recovery process.
Yeah.
Um,
And that right there is why bigger biceps are more important
that's
to
why we
save your life.
that's why we kicked it off today with bigger biceps. Um, and so yeah, coming to realizing, gaining my bearings, literally strapped to the table because talking about interpreting the world around me, uh, there were times where the sedative, it affects people differently. It makes some people paranoid, myself included. So I had dreams where I was trapped on a pirate ship, and to escape, we had to take out these tubes. Turns out I actually took out my tubes. Um,
Yeah.
so they had to physically restrain me, which was traumatic, even in my addled mind state.
Yeah.
So I come to and I'm still strapped down. And even when the restraints are taken off, I have never been that dependent on people for everything since I was probably 2 years old. I couldn't speak because of the trach. I physically could not get up out of bed. If my life or my family's life depended on it, game over. Too weak to do that. Um, talk about having to take a shit once I had regained enough continence to be out of briefs, which I was in for a long time. Someone had to come lift me up and put a bedpan under my ass, and God bless the people who did that. Eternally grateful for all of the personnel, doctors, nurses, speech language, PT, OT, porters, cleaners, all the people who do this. Um, fuck, man, you want to talk about helplessness and what that felt like. That that's where a new experience of grief really manifested for me. And I had to confront the question, just like, yes, there was the grief. There was profound grief of why had this happened? Why did this happen to me? Grieving the loss of my identity, my ability, my independence, my presence as a father and as a husband, owning a successful business. All that was gone. Thank God my family was still there, but I wasn't with them. Couldn't show up the way I wanted to. Didn't know if my business still existed. All of my accolades didn't mean shit because I'm here in this bed and I can't do what I want to or need to do.
Yeah.
None of that changed the fact that I was there and that this had happened, regardless of why. So the only question that really mattered was, what are you going to do about it? And this is not some David Goggins, and then I stayed hard. I fucking crushed it, bro. Um, this was, I say it this way, I made the decision once and I had to keep reminding myself of that decision day by day and sometimes hour by hour, where I wasn't dead. I still had my family waiting for me. I had no idea really what the road ahead was going to look like, and no one could tell me. And I just decided, look, if I got breath in my lungs, I'm not dead yet, so I ain't done yet. I'm gonna fucking find a way to keep going here. And then the waves of grief happened. I had days where fever spiked, and I what little wind was in the sails got taken out, and it was wrestling with that constantly and resolving to take just one more step on the path. And like we were saying, you want to talk about uh, a forced divorce from deriving self-worth from outcomes. I wouldn't recommend this, but this is one way to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
I definitely want to keep going. I have several more questions, and I need to go let some of this coffee out.
totally. Do you want to do that now?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. We'll just let it keep rolling. I'll edit this out.
Cool. Sounds good.
So I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
All right. All better.
Sweet.
So you talk about this life experience really just kind of punching you in the gut on detaching your self-worth from outcome.
Yep.
And like I definitely, the thing that starts going on in my mind is sports aside, sports accomplishments and lifting aside, I'm a hardcore DIYer.
Mm-hmm.
I take a big amount of pride in the sense of like, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure out how to do it rather than pay somebody to do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Gotten less toxic about it, I suppose, over the years. Cause like my dad's, he will not pay anybody anything. He's definitely very DIY. And I mean, for reasons that are kind of important to him. But anyway, in my head, when you're talking about that, I couldn't also help but think like, again, sports aside, like what that would be like to be so dependent on other people that I wouldn't be able to do the DIY stuff. I wouldn't be able to, oh, this is broken in the house, I'm going to fix it to provide for my family. Like the, not even just the self-worth, but the spiritual, like prodding and poking in a scenario like that. I'm having a hard time, like even like processing and imagining what that would be like if I were in that position. Like how do you start to process that? Because I would imagine that was also like the waves of grief and like that's a representation of the grief, and the fever is like the spiritual cleansing of that and experience of that. Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like my brain just like goes all over the damn place like that. It's like wild right now.
Yeah. Well, that I think I'm tripping on my words because it brings me back to what it was like, what you just described of having trouble making sense of it or imagining what it was like. Same, you know, and being being trapped in someone else's body was the sensation. There was no place to go and hide. I for a while couldn't even uh, numb myself and go, you know, distract myself by scrolling on social media or on my phone because I was too weak to even lift my phone above my face. Every time that I did, it kept falling onto my face and on my chest. So there was nowhere to go. There was no accepting for when I was asleep, which was all over the place because sleeping in a hospital is weird, as is whatever effects the drugs have on you. There's nowhere to go. So this absolutely amplified the grief of all of these things that I derive my worth and identity from. Most of them are gone. As I've sat with this longer and started to write about it, started to speak about it more, even while I made it out of the ICU in the hospital at large, that version of me died. I am here with you not as the same man. Um, I have physically more scars, and also identity wise, the old identity wasn't bad. And I think it's important to mention because sometimes, for whatever reason, we're forced to let go of who we were, how we identified, what points of pride we had, what we could do, and we're forced to put them down. Whether it's because of an injury, whether it's because of age, whether it's a lifestyle change, whether it's something else. And letting go of that part of you, or letting go of that past, I don't think has to be seen as like I'm putting down this thing that didn't serve me. I think it can be, and probably is for many. For me, though, this situation with HLH and this continuation of the journey with my vision loss has forced me to do that. And there are parts, man, that I wish I could fucking get back. There are parts that were good, and I believe, you know, philosophically, we're like functionally, it's good to have your eyes work normally. Ontologically, I don't believe that I or anybody derive worth from being able to see or, you know, looking a certain way, being able to function a certain way. I believe it's more intrinsic than that. Um, and going back to those earlier days and weeks in the hospital, once the direct threat to my life was lessened, and now it was a case of how do we get out of here? How do we get back home? Um, it's it cut especially or in a special way because I've spent most of my life as a healthcare provider and a provider as a husband and a father, and to be on the other side of that uh, was difficult, and one of to say the least, and one of the biggest lessons that taught me was to open myself up to help and more profoundly to love and compassion. Because I don't know if you've had this experience or you've probably run into people who have, but especially the perfectionists, the recovering perfectionists, especially the high achievers, we're often the ones who are quick to want to help other people, to offer a compliment. But when it's us who is offered it, or dare I say it, when we need it, accepting that can feel like defeat.
Yeah.
And that's what I was confronted with and had to make peace terms with.
You have a like an aha moment that I think because I think a lot of times people conceptualize this as like, oh, the clouds clear and it's bright and sunny and everything's sunshine and rainbows again. Did you have a moment like that?
Fuck no. Sorry, it wasn't sunshine and rainbows off the hop anyway.
Right.
But I think the clearest moment of that last lesson, opening myself up to help, being willing to receive help and love, came when I was at home. I was in the hospital for a total of about 3.5 months. I went in January 23rd and I came out May 1st of 2023. But when I came out and went back home, I was not well. I was still bedbound. Um, it was in it was in that first month of being home, excuse me, where I spoke to a mentor of mine, and I was really wrestling with the guilt and feeling like a burden to my wife because we knew that if I was going home, I couldn't need the level of care of a full-time nurse because my wife could not be a full-time nurse. We obviously knew I would need some care, so I had to be
Yeah.
well enough to go home. My wife, she is as close to a saint as I've ever uh, experienced anyone to be. She was doing all the things from changing my urinal, the portable urinal, because I couldn't go to the bathroom reliably on my own, to changing my bandages and like doing all the things. And I felt shitty about it because I felt like a burden to her. This has a parallel when it comes to disability, excuse me again, uh, which, my experience and journey with that intensified uh, because I'm very confident HLH sped up the degradation of my vision. So that's an experience that I know many people also have personally and societally and that sort of thing. My mentor on a call, as I shared this with him, he just simply asked, if Ashley were the one in bed, would you do the same thing? I was like, of course. Then stop fighting it and let her love you too. That was the most crystallized that it came forth. And I still had to work at it, but that was part of what I needed to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. Like I feel that. It's I mean not nearly in the same context, but I've definitely been not good at like receiving. There's definitely been things that I've had to work through on my own to be able to receive. I mean, and not just love, but just like a book from a friend, right? Like, particularly like receiving without letting something in the background make you feel guilty or like you owe people something. Like
Yes.
this person is giving to you to give to you.
Yes.
And I think a lot of that had to do with a lot of my toxic people pleasing patterns where I would I would give to people and do things for people with an unconscious expectation of receiving things, particularly love and acceptance back.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, having experiences like that, I think are very eye opening on a spiritual level. I appreciate the fact that there's this, it's not this moment of like the clouds part way and here's the sun,
Mhm.
because I think that is another nod back to your book reference of like just it's the journey
Yeah.
and following the journey and not the destination, not an expectation, but just allowing yourself to experience the journey is like huge.
Yeah.
Do you feel do you feel more free as a man after all of this than what you did before?
Hmm. Yes. In the sense, in in the sense that as a product of the journey, excuse me, I've again been forced to look at my life and wrestle with the questions of where do I derive my worth? How do I where do I get my identity from? Who am I now on the other side of this? Or, when I was going through the earlier rehab or recovery journey, who am I now? Because I am someone. This someone is different from before. Uh, Grappling with being legally blind and having a blinding, incurable disease. Who am I now? Um, if I can't do X, Y, Z. And for me, my my worth comes from being a child of God. I am loved, and I believe that my mission here is to love and to serve. And it is freeing to now not derive, I won't say any worth, because, and we'll come back to it, the biggest reason is old habits die hard. And again, that old perfectionist, you know, behavior loop still flares up uh, regularly. It's on a daily basis for me. It is freeing to decide. I do not need to look like everybody else. I do not need to do things like everybody else. I do not need to do things even like old Jared did to be worth something, to be worth the same. And coming back to this understanding that I've been given a gift in being here. Difficult as life is, because it's difficult for everybody for different reasons. And fleeting as it is, because I obviously had an acute brush with something that would have and really looked like it was going to take me out. And then it didn't. So it's the choice of what am I going to do with this? And again, for me, my goal is to make this as much as I can to help people have this experience of God's love, even if we never put it in those terms, regardless of what someone's spiritual or faith background may be. I want to make people feel seen and heard. And I want to, at the end of my life, whenever that is, be able to go as contentedly as possible because, I didn't just live, but I was alive. That last line, I can't take credit for. It's the chorus of one of my favorite songs by the band Beartooth called I Was Alive. And I'd recommend if anybody is vibing with what we're talking about, give that a listen.
One of the reasons why I ask if you feel more free as a man is primarily because one of the perspectives that I hold is we are free to be when the fear of death is no longer what drives our choices and decisions. And I think a lot of times you hear people that have these near-death experiences, they come out the other side and they're like, the level of gratitude to still be alive is higher and the fear of death is lower. And like fundamentally, I think that's really important because the only, how's the saying go? The only thing certain in life is death. Like at some point, the body will cease to move, it will cease to pump blood, and it will stop existing.
Nobody gets out of this life alive.
No, nobody does. And I think one of the things that's helped me like be free from that a bit more is just the idea of like when that day comes, like the universe doesn't stop, the trees keep growing, the wind keeps blowing, the earth keeps spinning, like everything keeps going. None of what I do matters. I don't matter. While at the same time, the fact that I am alive and having this conversation right now is fucking beautiful. So this idea of like death and no longer relinquishing the fear of death, to me, is like this letting go of this egoic attachment.
Mm.
And it's not the spiritual death is the ego death. And when you are free to be whatever the fuck you want to be right now in this moment, that is it. And I look at that as being the spiritual journey. And am I perfect at it? No, no. But like, I think a lot of those concepts help me be better at it than before. And so I was curious how this whole experience has reshaped or elevated any of those kinds of concepts for you.
Yeah. I I was a fan. I began to be a fan of Stoic philosophy, or at least the pop version of that, especially when it sort of reached a peak. Interestingly, it reached a peak in the rehab world around like 2018, 17, 18, give or take, with books like The Obstacle is the Way. I am a Ryan Holiday fan, and I find his books to be quite useful.
Yeah.
So the Stoic idea of Memento Mori, remember you must die, it 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 resonated from the moment that I heard it, which, at first pop can sound morbid, maybe not so much given what we're talking about here, but, you know, remember you must die, it harkens back to how the ancient Romans would, cart in Caesar in his triumph and have a slave whisper in his ear, "You're just a man," reminding him of his mortality and the fact that you're going to die just like every one of us, and the
Yeah.
world will keep spinning. And the Stoics use that as an exhortation to live intentionally, because you only have so much time and you don't know how much that is. And on the other side of getting out of the hospital and continuing the rehab journey, for me, I got that tattooed on my arm before I would have said that I was quote unquote back, or back to normal, or just reaching the sort of point where I thought, okay, where it felt like I'd been through most of it on a physical level, at least. And I remind myself of it, even as my vision continues to degrade. I've started to pair it with a tactile of, like, when I rub the inside of my forearm, I'm envisioning that tattoo, and then trying to bring myself back to that. Because, yes, especially early on, I was looking at life differently, and I still do. The same mentor who told me to stop fighting the receive, to just receive love and stop fighting it, also said that his experience was that people who go through these life threatening experiences, it can be shocking how quickly the bullshit of life starts to creep back in. And he was right, for me at least.
Yeah.
So it's a practice for me to come back to this understanding that I will die, and things will continue on. And what I do what I do matters, insofar as I want to leave people better than I found them.
Yeah.
Whether that has echoes, or whether anybody remembers me in, a generation or two, I don't know. And I wish I could fully, completely say I don't care. A little bit of ego is still kicking on, like, you know.
Yeah.
But I believe that ripples continue on, and that can be a little ripple can change someone's life, which can change others, which can keep going long after we go. So that's at
Yeah.
the core for me these days.
100%. You say all that too, and it made me remember, and I'm pretty sure this came from another Ryan Holiday book, in all honesty. I can't remember which one. Great author, for sure. But in this world of personal development, there's definitely been some times where I've had this experience of, like, when am I done? When can I be done? When can I put these books down? When I can put the journal down? When can I stop meditating? When can I stop doing all this stuff? When can I just be? And there's been times where I've wrestled with that, but I always come back to it. I always come back to the meditations and the journals and consuming other books and learning from other people. And But again, I think it was from a Ryan Holiday book that finally, like, the sentence finally like resonated with me. And like, there's other ways that it resonated with me as well, with like, it's the journey, not the destination. So the work's never done, but just the idea of cleaning. Like, if you're living, you have to clean. You can't stop cleaning your house. I mean, sure, you could hire somebody to clean it for you, but at the end of the day, there's going to be dust and dirt that you need to clean up along the way. When you make your dinner, you got to clean up after your dinner. When you make trash, you got to take the trash out. And that's what all this is, because life is going to continue to pile dust on you, and you need to continue to clean it off. And I was like, oh, man, like it was like one of those things that I knew, but like the way it said and the way it resonated in that moment was like, oh, okay, like it is. I get it. It's okay.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Like, yeah,
Sometimes you need to hear someone else say it or write it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And that's like, you probably already intellectually knew that what your mentor told you, that just receive the love. That's the same thing that you would do for her in that situation.
Yeah.
But hearing it from somebody else was like, it validates it in a sense, in a way that's needed, in a way that makes it more real.
Yeah. It's I find it often in this it's always different when it's you. You can say something to yourself and probably in many cases you say it, you know it, you believe it to be true and cool, that's good enough. There are some things, at least in my experience, that you need, or at least it's extremely helpful to hear from someone else that you trust. I think that has a parallel in training where, I mean, maybe for many of us in powerlifting, like especially if we've done it for an extended period of time or at a high level, it's what you do. You probably don't need help to show up to the gym. You probably feel worse if you don't show up to the gym or something stops you. For a lot of the folks that I work with, especially coaches and clinicians, uh, having that external accountability is something that's very useful. In equal measures, I find having someone being the person who can say to these coaches and clinicians, you're, hey, you're doing the work. Stop being an asshole to yourself and be for them who they are for their own clients or patients.
Oh yeah,
Because it's just always
100%.
different when it's you, you know?
Yep. There's there's definitely times I also have to remind myself of that, and a big shout out to Mim Chapman. She was the woman that taught me that for the first time in my life. Well, maybe I shouldn't say first time, but she was my therapist when I finally had that realization that I need to get help and work through some of my own personal demons and bullshit stories and things of that nature. And she would always tell me at the end of our calls, remember, in a world that can be mean, there's no need to be mean to yourself. Choose self-kindness, or something along those lines of reinforcing the idea of being kind to yourself. And that's, man, I definitely need to learn that. There's still times I do, because, yeah, that perfectionist, right? Like, you want, like, and shifting to effort instead of outcome is beneficial to that as well, for so many reasons.
And it's hard because it feels so damn good to have the outcome, the nice shiny dopamine hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in this pursuit of strength in sports, because, I mean, who sits there and remembers who the runner up was in sports in third place or fourth place or fifth place? Like, nobody remembers who was in the full lineup of the playoffs last year. They just remember who won, and that gets celebrated. And I get that. And it's also misleading.
Mhm.
And we have to learn to understand and recognize that that's misleading.
Agreed. Easier to find fulfillment when we do.
100%. 100%. So we know that having big biceps saved your life.
Amen.
And and we know now that, like, you've Like this has been a big spiritual journey for you that's elevated your life. One last question I want to end on before we take off here. I want to be mindful of your time. Maybe let's make it two-part question because it'll be interesting. How has getting to the other side of all this helped you show up as a better husband?
Going through all this, I can't personally think of a better embodiment of the vows that my wife and I took in sickness and in health. Those are words that we said, we meant them, and probably like many people, you don't expect you don't expect how you're going to have to live that out and in what circumstances. When I think of my wife and how she loves me, and I think of all of these beats along the journey, it makes me all the more resolved to reciprocate as best I can. Now, I will draw a distinction between what you brought up, which earlier, which I resonate with, old people pleasing habits of doing things to receive love, and the subconscious drive to to receive that approval and that inclusion. My favorite definition of love comes from Thomas Aquinas, of willing the good of the other as other. And that manifests different ways. In English, we have one word, love. You can look at different languages, whether Greek or otherwise, and find different meanings for different kinds of love and how it shows up. I believe that love is a choice, and it's not solely the feeling or the emotional experience of it. So for me, love has meant doing the little things that I can see or that I can think of so that my wife doesn't have to do them, which is as simple and as silly as remembering to press the button on the dishwasher when I come up for the night so the dishes are ready in the morning. I'm about like 60% of the way there. There's still some mornings where I haven't hit it. I'm working on it. Um, or it's, helping her bring in groceries, or, just do stuff so that it's a little act of love and service for her. It's also, um, I think, just strengthened my resolve to simply be present for her, and not be present for her when she's going through something, when emotions flare, when she's tired, when she's stressed, and not jump right to the fixing mode. Um, I think there was a book or like a YouTube video years ago, like it's not about the nail. And I think this transcends gender, but I think it's a common experience, especially for men, to be like, you have a nail sticking out of your forehead. Let me fix it or tell you how to fix it. Where, yes, solutions are useful, but it's not the first thing you need to go to all the time. Maybe a silly
Yes.
example, you know, but my wife, as we've grown deeper in our marriage and grown closer through all this, I'm better at recognizing, oh, she just needs presence and validation and to be seen right now. She doesn't need the solution yet. And if I can give her this presence, even though I am dog shit tired and I don't want to do this, I'm going to do it anyway. And it won't be perfect, but it'll be something, and that'll be enough.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing for me.
You just dropped the most important life advice for every male on the planet. Like I a lot of my personal development journey has been like consuming a lot of the masculine feminine dynamics and stuff of that nature, and like that his presence is so huge because for us men we often go to the fixer mode, and fixer mode is not presence. Fixer mode is future. And your
Yes.
woman, the feminine, desires your presence. Just hold her. Just be with her. Let her emotions flow. Be the safety container for her emotions, however wild and uncomfortable they may be or make you feel. Like, God, that's huge. And it's like, I love that that's the thing that you have gleaned from it, because it's so huge, and it's still like one of those things that I know I need and want to be better at that skill. As a former engineer, I'm definitely like problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, problem, solution, and never just sit with it.
Right.
Just sit with the fucking thing. So I
But it's
really
harder,
appreciate that.
Ross.
That's
I
where
don't
you
want
went.
to sit with it.
Right? For sure. The second part to that question, and I suspect that maybe the answer is similar. How has this experience shaped you to help you show up better as a father?
Mm. It is similar. It's, oh, even taking one step higher, I'll say. I I'm working at intentionally reminding myself that in the moments like it being 9:30 at night and my one or both of my twins not being asleep yet, and them calling out for, the second or third or fifth time that night, and I'm tired and my wife's tired, so I'm going out to see what you need, reminding myself I very nearly didn't get that opportunity. And I have one more hug that I get to give my little girl. I have one more day that I got to put all of them into bed. Um, and it's very much a work in progress because, you know, as a human racked with fatigue, I just want to get this done. I want to get you to sleep. I want to go to sleep myself. So it's not like, you know, I found nirvana here. It's this intentional bringing back to my hallway is messy because I have three daughters who are here and healthy and present. Okay. I'm okay with tripping on another boot because, you know, my little girl put that there. We're going to work on the cleaning up. We are going to do that too. Um, but it's that presence of mind. And it is also continuing to work on, I get to help keep shaping these kiddos, and what I do here matters for them. So that means holding space when they're having a meltdown. And I'm sure it'll be different as they reach their preteen years and their teenage years and their adult years. And you're on the
Yeah.
same path. I don't know how old your
She's
Rosalie is.
9.
She's 9. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're at a similar stage with our
But I
kids.
only have one, so it's like less of the load.
Yeah. I don't know how much that's gonna of a difference it's gonna make from what I hear. I don't know, people like to say you're in trouble. I'm like, I know. But holding that space, trying to recognize the things that trigger me and recognizing what what things are about me and doing the work so that I can be as present of a father and show up the way that these girls need to be loved and raised so that they in turn can have a positive influence on the people they meet, their own families. So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Like, I think one of the things that I like to think about in moments like this and point out to people, because we didn't talk about lifting weights a lot. There's a couple of points in there, and here we are. This is called the intentional athlete. Well, what did we talk about that's athletic based? Well, there's all kinds of things that were important from your athletic learnings that set you up for success, and then you go through, we'll summarize it as an ego death and a spiritual opportunity for growth that was a reinforcement of things that you learned from lifting that is going to allow you to lift with greater purpose and show up in the different roles with greater purpose and less ego, and thusly more joy and fulfillment. And I I suppose I like to point that out and talk about this kind of stuff because I, as somebody who's kind of been and walked similar things and experienced similar things, not the health considerations, but like just the freedom that we can get on the other side of those things. if we're intentional and if we pay attention and stop being so mindless in the ways that society encourages us to be mindless, uh, I that's like the thing that fires me up that I want to share with the world, right? Like you talk about like these giving of our gifts, and gosh, we could go on and on about that, but I just wanted to highlight that and point that out and leave it there. Jared, I thank you so much for your time and sharing your life with me and with the people listening. How might they be able to get in touch with you if they want to continue the conversation or just follow along with what you do next?
First off, thank you, Ross, for the time and the invitation. I've really enjoyed this. And if you ever want to do it again, let me know. I'd be happy to make that time.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to, yeah, continue the conversation or shoot the shit about big biceps or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or lifting, Instagram is going to be the easiest place. It's jared.unbreakable. Um, yeah, and if anything that Ross and I have covered here hit home or was really useful for you to hear, I'm always all ears. I love to know what resonates. So yeah,
Yeah. Likewise, my friend. Appreciate you. You have a great day.
you too.